I'm Dana, and today I want to talk about questioning your autistic perspective because it's something that I've struggled with quite a lot. And we're jumping straight in because what I mean by this is when you're in like social situations and arguments and like anything that involves other people essentially, which is a lot of factors of life, I feel like my perception and my reality and the way that I've experienced things is often just seen as wrong and not given a chance because I'm autistic. Like, especially with, like, say, family members. Before I was autistic, I felt like when I would say, no, I misinterpreted that, that's not how it came across, and I don't think that's how you said it, they'd be like, okay, that's not how I said it, I was wrong sometimes. And once I'd gotten my diagnosis, it became very, well, you're autistic, so you clearly misunderstood and you don't understand the social etiquette and the social cues and body language. And suddenly, any sort of perception that I had of the situation is invalidated and it's not considered like reality anymore because it's my perception of it as an autistic person. And it's one of the few things that I've also experienced with people I'm closer to and people that I like are for the most part really understanding and really great about everything. They still sort of question if how I perceive things can really be valid and respected because I'm perceiving it as an autistic person. And it's as though suddenly no one can say something wrong to me, I've just taken it the wrong way. No one can be rude or mean, it's just that I've taken it the wrong way. And I think I experienced it most at my last, like, longish lasting job, because there were so many times that I'd say to my boss, like, we need to change this at events, or I think we should do this differently at events and blah, 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 because of the way people reacted to things. And before I'd gotten my diagnosis, I felt like he was very receptive. I felt like he really valued my opinion on things and implemented changes based on my opinions. And after I'd told him about my diagnosis, which was about 6 months after I'd actually been diagnosed, because I was nervous that he'd treat me differently. And after that, I didn't feel like my opinion was valid anymore. I didn't feel like it was valued. I didn't feel like it was taken into account. You know, I'd tell him like such and such happened and I felt like it turned the room really awkward. And he'd be like, oh, well, I think that's just the way that you read things. And it's like, maybe it is just the way that I'm reading it as an autistic person, but also maybe it's not. Maybe that is the way that things are because I've spent 25 years of my life living within this society. I've spent 25 years of my life trying my best to understand other people and to be understood myself. The effort that and I think probably every neurodivergent person out there puts into trying to understand how people work is beyond what any, I think, neurotypical person or holistic person would put in. We put in so much extra effort because none of it's natural. You know, speaking purely from my experience and for me, no part of interacting with people comes naturally or instinctually. It all feels like I have to put on a show, I have to perform, I have to be the social version of myself that doesn't exist. And in order to like craft and create this person that I become when I'm around people and when I'm filming and when I'm in any way not just on my own, entirely unmasked because I'm alone, you know, I've put all of my knowledge of people and human behaviour and social etiquette into building this persona so that I can, you know, I don't instinctually understand it in the way that a neurotypical and holistic person would, that's for sure. It's not an immediate understanding for me. I have to add things together and be like, oh, they did this and said this and then this happened and then it felt like this because of this, so that means this. I have to do the mental puzzle and the problem solving for sure that neurotypical and holistic people aren't doing. But I've learned enough to have the pieces of the puzzle to put it together and understand, you know? And it just feels very infantilizing and honestly in some ways dehumanizing that when people know I'm autistic, suddenly all of that goes out the window and they just think any misunderstanding or misperception or just anything going wrong in a social setting must be my fault as the autistic person. And sometimes it's not. And I absolutely think that plays into why so many of us experience abuse and experience being manipulated and gaslit and everything else. Because we're told, even in the nicest of situations by the nicest of people, that our perception and our understanding isn't the reality and isn't the way it really is. We're wrong, we're misunderstood. So when it comes to people who are abusing you and who are gaslighting you and are being bad people, it's very easy for them to tell you, no, you're misunderstanding again, it's just your perception, that's not reality. You know, it's incredibly easy to believe that. And I don't have all the numbers and everything, you can Google it yourself, but I definitely have read somewhere at some point that a large number of neurodivergent people are abused and gaslit and manipulated and lied to and everything else. Because we are vulnerable in that way. And I don't think it's something that we're perhaps naturally vulnerable to. I think that perhaps it is that we're given these signals that we don't understand and we don't pick up on, and that definitely can't be blamed for every situation. Some of us are just more vulnerable because we're autistic, and that's just the way our traits play. I am someone who's far too trustworthy. I will trust people with complete loyalty until the moment I'm given a really good reason not to, and it's backfired on me many times, and I've trusted the completely wrong people, and I could have ended up in some really terrible situations. And lots of autistic people, and especially autistic women, have ended up in those horrible situations, and it can't always be helped. But I think that, giving us the messaging from a very early age, or from whenever we got a diagnosis, that our perception of things is incorrect, definitely plays into it to some degree with a lot of people. And it's also just very upsetting. I'm trying to put more emotional descriptors into my videos and actually read and understand my emotions a bit more, because I sort of just feel a lot of everything all the time, and I find it very difficult to put a finger on. And a lot of things make me angry, a lot of things really frustrate me. A lot of the times when I'm upset, it does turn to anger and frustration, because I've got that autistic sense of justice, and I'm like, this isn't how it should be, this isn't fair. But with this one, it just upsets me because it makes me feel like people don't trust me, like people don't see me as a trustworthy person. Not in the way of that I'd lie or that I'd steal or anything, but just in the way of they don't think that I am mature enough or enough of a human being to actually have a perception of the world and situations around me. It's really upsetting. That makes me feel bad. And I also, a lot of the time, I just so often question if they're even right. Lots of people make lots of mistakes about all sorts of different things. And there's so many things that I've been told are normal, or the way things are done, or the right way of doing things. And it's later turned out that that person was wrong. And it was actually my idea or my perception or my thing or whatever that was the right way of doing things. But I'm incredibly easily talked out of that because of how often I'm told that my perception isn't the correct one or isn't the reality, Sorry to just keep using those words. There's plenty of times that I will misunderstand and I will screw up, and I try my best to understand it so I don't do it again. And it can be very difficult because it does mean that I've had arguments with people where they clearly want to feel like the argument's been done and we can move on, and I'm like, I'm not arguing anymore, but I need to understand exactly what the situation was, because otherwise I feel like I'm just going to repeat it over and over again, and people think that I'm doing that intentionally, and no one ever questions their perception of that, even though I'm not doing it on purpose. I'm not disregarding their feelings or thoughts or boundaries or whatever else, If I don't fully understand the situation, I will repeat the same mistakes. But whereas my perceptions are questioned and invalidated, their perception, I've done so many videos about different labels I've been assigned and different things I was called before knowing I was autistic, and it's very similar to that, in the way that people perceive me as a drama queen when actually I was having meltdowns, things like that. The neurotypical holistic perception is very rarely right about us, and I'm willing to believe that my neurodivergent perception isn't always correct either, but I've spent a lot of time around neurotypicals trying to fit in and be one of you. I think I have a better understanding of neurotypicals than most neurotypicals do of neurodivergent people. That's just sort of how lived experience works. That's just how it be. It's just one of those things that I've seen actively happen a lot on Twitter, where people have perceived an autistic person being really rude or snobby or whatever, and the autistic person's come back and be like, no, there was literally nothing behind it, that was a completely genuine comment, and the person's like, no, it wasn't. And it's just one of those things that I haven't seen anyone talk about, the autistic perception or autistic reality or whatever, and I've seen it played out so many times in person, not in person, but in Twitter threads and TikTok comments and the like, and I think it's very interesting, and I think it's quite weird that no one's really talking about it, and I'm sure we've all experienced it over and over. A lot of the time when I put out videos like this, I'm sort of like, has anyone else? Is this weird? But with this one, I'm like, no, I'm sure loads of you have experienced this. I'd love to hear your tales of it in the comments and what you think and everything. But it just feels like it has to be a universal autistic experience, because it's something that comes from neurotypicals and is so prevalent to me in society that I feel like other people have to have experienced it. But yeah, that was today's video. If you're not already, it'd be lovely if you wanted to subscribe. You can also follow me on like TikTok and Instagram and stuff. I am posting more on TikTok. I'm kind of getting into it. You can head over there to see a video of me meeting Elijah Wood a couple of years ago. It's fun, I don't know. I've already asked you to comment, but I'm going to say it again because I really enjoy getting comments. I really love reading them, and I am trying to get better at actually replying to them, but people scare me. So whoever you are, wherever you are, I hope you're having a lovely morning, evening, day, afternoon, week, month, year, and I'll see you again in a couple of days.